All right, Rockets down 0-1 in the first round series. It's just getting going, but it started on Easter night last night. And 95-85 victory for the Warriors at Toyota Center. What did Game 1 reveal to you about this series? 7-1-3-5-7-2.
The bunnies was out, man.
The bunnies were out.
Oh, it was some people at the. Oh, you meant the shots.
The shots.
I thought you were talking about people showing up. That's one thing I do love about the playoffs is that the playoffs makes the arena, no matter where the arena is, a place to be, which means that courtside look, that lower bowl look, people be out there showing up, trying to be seen, right? To see and be seen. That's
the baddies.
That's where I thought you went.
Snow bunnies.
That's where I thought you were going, to be completely honest. But no, shout out to the city of Houston, getting out to the building, but then also getting into the Rockets vibe of things, not just going and going to be seen, but going to be a part of the game and like the energy in the building. B. Scott was out there. We'll talk to him tomorrow, obviously, as we always do, but he was in the building for the game. He said that the energy was incredible to start, that people were putting on the shirts and like getting in on the Rockets vibe as opposed to just being there to be spectators. They were part of the energy, which I appreciate.
That was about as great an environment as the Rockets have. In fact, Fred VanVleet kind of took like a backhanded shot at him afterwards, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me, but something along the lines of, yeah, we've been waiting for that, and it showed up tonight. So it was a compliment, question mark. Okay, but what did this game reveal, right? What did this game reveal? Let me put it very, very succinctly. There's a lot of things that we've talked about that we will talk about before Wednesday's game that might change. Maybe they'll make more free throws. Maybe they'll have fewer turnovers. Maybe the rebounding edge will ultimately make the difference. Maybe they'll figure something out on the defensive side. But ultimately, it comes down to one thing for me in this matchup between the Rockets and the Warriors. And I'll put it this way. The Rockets have guys who can score, but they don't have an effective offense.
Yeah.
Like, they have guys that can score.
No, for sure.
They have guys that will score.
Alperin.
Yeah. They have guys that can finish. They have guys that can score in transition. They have guys that can knock down threes. But you can have all that and still not have an effective offense. And that would be, we were talking earlier, were you more encouraged or discouraged? That was discouraging to me.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that you can ask, and I saw various NBA analysts asking, who is the player on the Rockets that, and you can get to this different ways, that can draw a double team or basically can dictate to the defense what they have to show you. Yeah. And you don't have that. The closest I think to that you might have to that is Alperin, and then when he is playing at his best, maybe Jalen Green, and even in those instances, you definitely didn't get that last night from him. And so the tough is that immediately starts, and I know the fellas in the morning show were talking about this, immediately starts you thinking towards that's what the Kevin Durant or that's what whatever the star is for. And I think what it reveals is that you're going to have to be a lot more clean around the edges because in the half court, you're not going to be able to dictate in the same way as other playoff series what happens. So you've got to be really clean with what you do, including I still think that you can run through Alperin, but I think there's going to have to be better off-ball movement. There's going to have to be other things that forces the Golden State Warriors to give you certain things or be able to get you some buckets as opposed to just kind of get into your offense. Well, one of them is go quicker. Move through your offense quicker and not allow the Golden State Warriors to just sit back and scope out what you're doing from a mile away.
We talked about it Thursday when we were kind of talking about the 7-point plan, to being able to contend for a championship. One of them that we did not check off the box was you have to have a true superstar, like an absolute true top 5, top 10 player. Well, we know they don't have that. They have guys that can maybe show some, some tendencies to that, but they don't have that. And then the other thing, you just touched on it, in a half-court set, not having an effective offense despite having some scores, that is magnified and amplified when they are confusing you with their defense, specifically the zone defense that they were having, that they played against the Rockets. It just made those passing lanes that much more difficult. Immediately, Şengün, who was the best thing this offense had, especially early, actually the whole first half, they were already double teamed because they're running that zone.
Yeah.
So there were two men right on him.
Some other things. Somebody said nothing. The Rockets are who we thought they were. I will say that it did reveal that some of the things that it felt like they had gotten entirely over in that last stretch of the season can still be there. Like missing bunnies, that's something that we'd seen this Rockets team deal with at times. Obviously, free throws is another thing. Turnovers at times, And, sometimes the inconsistent play of certain players can show up. Namely, I think Jalen Green in this instance where, getting to your good shots is going to matter a good amount. Now, someone was speaking to people. I've seen various people ask, well, why not go to, especially if you need offense, a couple of players who are more offensively inclined in either Reed Sheppard or Cam Whitmore? Like, what did you think? What would you think about like that, right? If you're looking at, if you want to term it in the what did this series reveal, maybe that you need to be more offensively inclined in some ways. Is that a way that you think that you could get to it? Maybe seeing some Cam Whitmore or some Reed Sheppard minutes.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, play these guys more. What I am going to say is I think when you're facing a defense like this, and the Warriors play really good defense. It's not just the Rockets out there playing defense. It's going to be harder for those guys, to find the minutes. I was surprised that Ime only had an eight-man rotation. That was pretty tight.
Yeah, that was an interesting revelation tight. A man who typically runs like 9-10 players in a game, he went right down to the starters that you're used to plus Steven Adams, Jabari, and Tari. Like that was the rotation, and I do think that that's interesting. That it seems like they'll stick to that to some degree, but. Yeah, I'm more and Reed Sheppard. I actually don't think that that's where you turn to. I think that you just and I think Ime kind of spoke to that. Like he feels like they got offensive looks that they just did not capitalize on them, and that he's not going to make too many shifts. But I do think that one of the revelations was that the defense is absolutely good enough to get you to where you need to go. Like it's 100% good enough to get you to where you need to go.
And part of the reason I say that they have guys that can score but not an effective offense is how do you start that offense? Where does it start?
Transition.
Well, okay, but you're not going to get transition on every possession. Like when you're running an offense, Fred VanVleet, who we all love and has been effective for this team, especially just his leadership and such. He had a hard time effectively starting this offense. Jalen Green, again, not to be harsh, but he crumbled. He wasn't up for the moment. Maybe he will be on Wednesday night, but he wasn't last night. So where do you Şengün? Well, we just talked about like that. They've effectively said not Şengün. It's not gonna run through him. And you mentioned this last night as well. He's a baby Jokic for a reason. He doesn't have that whole bag. That right. Jokic has,
especially passing over and out of doubles and clogged tall trees and such. Somebody said, "How can Reed not play? Podziemski sucks." And he can guard him. Okay, he starts guarding him, but one thing that you're going to get in the playoffs is people are always going to attack your weak links, and that's just going to turn into, hey, Reed, come up here and guard, or you're gonna be fighting to make sure that you don't give up a switch of him onto Steph Curry. And if you want more Steph Curry open looks, more power to you. You can abide by that in a series like this, especially because you played pretty well. You leaned on him. I thought that was a good thing. That was revelatory. That I think that'll pay dividends in later games in the series, especially if you could push it longer and longer. But yeah, Reed on the floor, he's going to get eaten up defensively in a way that he was already getting eaten up pretty much when you're in the regular season. How much more when you have teams that game over game are actively scheming towards get to your weak points.
Well, let me ask you this though: you're down 0-1 at home, so you've lost that advantage. If you go down 0-2, this series is over. It's effectively over. I don't think anybody would argue against that. So I'm not going to say desperate, but do you get a little more daring, in game 2 because it is that important a game?
I think that you have to trust the strategy that you have. I think the situation that you have, the strategy that you have is the one that's available to you. Because, if you're asking the question, how do you get into half-court offense, and you don't have a great answer, so then throw the entire playbook out the window and just scramble in a 0-1 series. I feel like that's too much or too far-fetched to get to. Now, one thing that people asked, in fact, someone asked Ime Udoka after this game, would you consider starting Jabari Smith Jr.? Because he had a very good game, at least when it came to he had a good game scoring the basketball, and he was in that lineup that was on the floor when you really were able to make a run. He looked pretty good in that way. And so Ime was asked, would you consider maybe starting Jabari Smith Jr.?
It was. Some guys did struggle offensively. You're not going to overreact to one game, but if guys do play better, we have a chance there. 10-point loss. I said Sunday in '95, it wasn't offensively poor showing. The defense was good enough, but not going to overreact to that game. Like I said, it's some of the guys' first time, and we had our chances.
Well, the thing is, they're not going to overreact. He just said it, but they need to react. You posed the question, or made the point. this is your offense essentially. Like are you going to be desperate or at least daring in some of the changes you make? I think you have to do something. I think you have to do something, whether it's I mean, we talk about Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. It might just be as simple as running, some old school high pick and rolls that you just try to rely on your best scorer to get a bucket in the. I mean, that's what the Warriors were doing. I mean, they when they were rushing Steph, they let him make the decision whether it was a pick and roll, a pick or not, to be able to penetrate or not. I mean, put the ball in somebody's hands to at least initiate something aggressively.
Yes, I mean, some high pick and roll would be interesting if you can get them to pick you up that high, right? I think that's going to be the interesting thing. And I don't disagree. Like if Jalen doesn't produce the series, it's going to be a problem. Yeah. But I think that what you have to do is just trust that you're not going to shoot 20% from three again, and that you're not going to miss a whole bunch of bunnies, and that hopefully you're not going to turn the ball over to that same degree and give yourself an opportunity to win. So that's where I'm at ultimately with that portion of it. One thing that I also found was insightful was, so this whistle's going to be light, huh? And of course that changes game to game.
It was all day. It was all weekend.
That whistle was incredibly, incredibly light, which I did not love, especially for the physicality of the Rockets. So that was a little concerning, and maybe that also leans into a situation where you go, if you don't have this type of whistle, do the Rockets flourish a little bit more?
Yeah.
We'll see what that looks like come Wednesday when Game 2 happens. But excited as the series continues.